Welcome back. We're joined, as we have the privilege of being, each week by one of the country's preeminent national security reporters. He is Bill Gertz, the author of the prize-winning column Inside the Ring at the Washington Times. He's also the senior editor of the Washington Free Beacon and a regular here, I'm very pleased to say. Bill, welcome. It's good to have you.
Hi, Frank. Good to be on the show.
Well, you've had a busy week, my friend. There's been a lot going on in the national security space, and as ever, you've covered it brilliantly. Maybe we could start with your sense of the incoming chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joe Dunford, known as Fighting Joe to his wife, apparently, and his troops. What did you make of his testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee yesterday, Bill, and how did you think the committee took it?
I thought he did a very skillful job at answering their questions and avoiding getting caught between the White House and the Republican-ruled Senate on a number of issues, but I looked closely to see if there were going to be major changes between Dunford's tenure as chairman of the Joint Chiefs as well over the current Chairman Dempsey. I didn't see a lot of daylight between their positions. Dunford does have a reputation as being a warfighter. He was a commander in Afghanistan. He's also the Marine Corps commandant, but on some of the social issues, he's also been fairly acquiescent to the Obama administration's agenda.
And one of the things that you reported on in the Free Beacon today was his response to questions about this apparently ever-expanding breach, we're told, by the Chinese, of the Office of Personnel Management's computers and compromising the database that had something on the order of 20 million or so personnel files, including a lot of very sensitive personal information. What did the general say about that, Bill?
Well, yeah, this is shaping up to be one of the worst cyber attacks in American history, the OPM hack. And Dunford was asked how he would respond to it, and he said it's confirmed as chairman that he would offer the president a full range of options, which again was a carefully calculated response. He is ultimately in charge of the U.S. Cyber Command, or as at least near the chain of command there, as the principal advisor to the President and Secretary of Defense. Somebody like Dunford would be the person that would say, hey, it's time to take the gloves off and start using offensive cyber attacks. Unfortunately, the President, as I've reported in the past, about 2 years ago, was presented some military and intelligence options for using offensive counterattacks against China and rejected it. The administration has adopted a passive approach. They're favoring legal and diplomatic measures, which clearly aren't working, as the nature of these cyber attacks, both in scale and in sophistication, is increasing.
Bill, you've reported on the testimony of the man, as you say, that General Dunford will be replacing shortly, namely General Martin Dempsey, the outgoing chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He appeared also before the Senate Armed Services Committee earlier this week and made a number of statements that seemed to me to be evidence of maybe getting a little short in terms of his tenure in the military, showing a little bit more leg, particularly on Iran, a subject we were talking about earlier in the program, Bill, and that is he's exhibiting a lot of concern about this outfit that the administration seems determined to not only do a deal with, but to shower tens of billions of dollars upon. What are the kinds of concerns General Dempsey described?
Well, the first thing, he was asked by Senator Tom Cotton, how many American soldiers has Iran killed? And with these explosively formed projectiles, these are basically a shaped charge which the Iranians developed and passed on to terrorists in Iraq, and they were used against our troops there in the early 2000s. And he said that the number is around 500. This is a significant disclosure. It's not necessarily new, but it's significant. And then he was also asked what other activities they're involved in, and he put the whole range: supporting terrorism, cyber attacks, other destabilizing activities. So clearly he was identifying Iran as a rogue state. And, you know, that's the problem with these nuclear negotiations. We shouldn't even be having them because it's a fool's errand to try and negotiate an honest agreement, a diplomatic agreement with a rogue state. They have no interest in observing anything and they've declared that the U.S. is their enemy. So the administration is really, as I'm sure you're aware, undermining our security with this whole facade of a nuclear negotiation with a rogue state like Iran.
Yeah, that's come to my attention, Bill. We spent a lot of time talking about it, as a matter of fact, on this program. Our guest is Bill Gertz with the Washington Free Beacon and also columnist at the Washington Times. Bill, you really put your finger on it. It's not just, of course, the problem that a rogue state is an unreliable partner. It's not just, as nobody does better than you, the reporting on outfits like this violating treaty obligations. It's that we will be pretending that we can somehow compartmentalize their conduct in this one area and be indifferent to the fact that as we enrich them with immense amounts of money, that isn't going to flow, at least in part, into some of these other activities that General Dempsey has expressed concern about. It's just mind-boggling, and I think represents more national security malfeasance and fraud. Bill, let me ask you about one other thing that you've been covering closely for a while now, and it's I think it's just incredibly important. That is the growing threat from Russia. In fact, as I understand it, General Dunford said the nation's greatest threat at the moment comes from Russia, and that is at least in part because of the rapidly accelerating efforts by Vladimir Putin's regime to rebuild and make vastly more capable their nuclear forces. Talk about the growing sense of peril from Russia and specifically the nuclear weapons form.
This week, Representative Mike Rogers, who's the chairman of the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Strategic Forces, gave a really good speech to a breakfast meeting of defense officials and experts and basically highlighted what he said was the growing nuclear threat from Russia. He pointed out that the reset policy, which was the hallmark of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, has been an utter disaster. He pointed out that after World War II, both Japan and Germany were converted from enemies to friends. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened in Russia. Russia is becoming a greater threat, and they're in the midst of a major strategic nuclear forces buildup. Combined with Vladimir Putin-style neo-Soviet policies aimed at trying to defeat the United States on a different scale this time, not the same as the Soviet Union, but clearly the nuclear forces are really front and center on Russia's revanchism now. He's pointing out that we're in a situation where our nuclear weapons haven't been improved since the 1990s, so he's calling for a really robust modernization.
Well, that's really welcome and long overdue. I hope he is able to translate it into actual policy in terms of both what he's doing up on Capitol Hill and what the administration is doing as well. And Bill, just finally, in closing quickly, hypersonic threats are in the mix both for the Russians and Chinese as well, right?
Absolutely. This is the new threat. We need to develop missile defenses against them, and we haven't been doing that. Basically, the Chinese have conducted 4 hypersonic vehicle tests. This is a Mach 10, 7,000 mile an hour maneuvering nuclear strike capability. The Russians conducted one in February, and this is really the future. These nations understand that this type of weaponry is going to be the weapon of the future. The U.S. is way behind. We need to develop more of them. We had a test last year, and the weapon blew up on the test weapon blew up on the launch pad after launch.
But as you say, an emphasis on defenses in particular. Bill Gertz, as always, thank you for your time today and all the great work that you do. Keep it up. Come back to us again very soon. The rest of you, I hope, will come back to us again Monday. Same time, same station. Until then, this is Frank Gaffney. Thanks for listening.